Before I move on to introduce the stellar cast of speakers that we have with us, I'd like the participants to adhere to some ground rules so that we can build upon an efficient discourse and the ideas of exchange can take place. Firstly, I'd like all the participants to mute themselves if they haven't already, and please make sure your mic is kept on mute during the entirety of the session. Second, if you have any questions which you think shall be addressed by the speakers, please send them in the chat box and we will make sure that we address them according to the availability of the speaker at the end of the session. That being said, I am pleased to welcome the two stellar speakers we have on the dais today. First, not first being retired Justice Rameshwar Singh Malik, former judge, Punjab and Haryana High Court, and designated senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India. Second, which we have with us today is Mr. Sanjay Rathi, co-chairman, Bar Council of Delhi, and former additional advocate general of State of Haryana in the Supreme Court of India. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Justice Malik to commence the session. The stage is all yours, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Certainly, sir.
Sorry?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
First of all, I would like to thank the students of Center for Criminal Justice Administration of Ram Manohar Lohia National Law University for inviting me to this webinar. It's great to see Mr. Sanjay Rathi on the panel as well. I would like to appreciate the tremendous work he has done to help the lawyers who are in distress during these troublesome times. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and in high spirits. The topic for today's webinar is very important as it deals with one of the most used as well as misused powers of the high courts in the country. Like most laws in our country, this provision is also a gift of the exhaustive codification of laws that took place during the British rule. Section 482 CRPC finds its origin in the old CRPC, that is Code of Criminal Procedure 1898. Section 482 CRPC as we see today is pari materia to Section 561A of the old CRPC. With the CRPC having 484 sections in all, coming at the fag end of the statute, Section 482, in my opinion, is one of the most important provisions of code which gives the high courts very wide powers. To understand the purpose and object of the provision, let's begin with reading the provision itself.
I request the participants to please keep mute once again.
Saving of inherent powers of the High Court. Nothing in this code shall be deemed to limit or affect the inherent powers of the High Court to make such orders as may be necessary to give effect to any order under this code or to prevent the abuse of the process of any court or otherwise to secure the ends of justice. Simply put, the three basic objectives which have been sought to be achieved by inserting Section 482 in the code are: first, to make such orders as may be necessary to give effect to any order under the code. Two, to prevent the abuse of process of any court. And third, to secure the ends of justice. A bare reading of Section 482 shows that it saves the inherent powers of the High Court. But one may wonder that what are these inherent powers? The words inherent powers have been used in the entire code twice. firstly in the title of the section and secondly in its body. But at the same time, the code is silent on the definition of inherent powers. So what are these inherent powers? Basically, the provision does not provide any special powers to the high courts. The provision, in fact, empowers the high court to ensure that the orders passed by any court under the code are given effect in their truest sense, and that there is no abuse of the process of court. To secure the ends of justice, High Court may pass any order it deems necessary. This would then take us to the obvious question that which courts can exercise these inherent powers? Are these powers available to the High Courts only? Or can the Supreme Court also exercise these powers? According to the code, these powers are only available to the High Courts. The Supreme Court cannot exercise the inherent powers under Section 482 of the Code and can only consider legality of a decision passed by the High Court wherein it has exercised or refused to exercise its inherent powers under this provision. The subordinate courts do not have any inherent powers and have to strictly follow the procedure laid down in the code. Although these powers are for the high courts to exercise under the CRPC, yet in some specific situations, these powers can be exercised by the high courts under Article 2 to 6 and by the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution. For example, an FIR can be quashed by the high courts under Article 2 to 6 as well as under Section 482. And the same can also be quashed by the Supreme Court under Article 32. A recent example being the case of Arnab Ranjan Goswami versus Union of India, wherein the Supreme Court exercised its powers under Article 32, quashing several FIRs against the petitioner. High courts as well as the Supreme Court would formally, High Court as well as the Supreme Court would normally refrain themselves from exercising the writ jurisdiction to quash an FIR, as the petitioner always has the alternative remedy of approaching the High Court under Section 482 of the Code. So, when should the High Court exercise its powers under Section 482? This aspect, I feel, is very important. Having a certain power is one thing, and how to use the power is a different thing altogether. The manner in which the high courts exercise these powers at times would make one feel as to whether the high court was justified in invoking the provision or not. The jurisdiction of the high court is completely discretionary. The high court can also refuse to exercise its discretion. The jurisdiction must be exercised judiciously. The high courts must invoke this power sparingly and not in a routine manner. If these powers are exercised in a routine manner in every other case, the very purpose of inserting the provision in the code would stand defeated. This power must be exercised only when the litigant does not have any other remedy in law. If an alternative remedy is specifically provided in law, this provision must not be invoked by the high courts. Moving on, there are some basic aspects which the high courts must keep in mind while exercising these inherent powers, which have been recognized by the Supreme Court as well. Firstly, While exercising these inherent powers, the High Court does not conduct a trial or appreciate evidence. This power of the High Court is limited to cases that compel it to interfere in order to prevent gross abuse of legal process. Secondly, the High Court will be well within its powers to grant relief even to a person who has not filed a petition under Section 482 CRPC. In other words, these inherent powers can be exercised by the High Court suo motu as well. Thirdly, the High Court cannot and must not exercise the power under the section under 482 CRPC if the apex court is seized of the matter, because if any such order is passed, that order would be an order without jurisdiction. Fourthly, the conduct of complainant as well as the accused must be taken into consideration while exercising the powers under Section 482. And lastly, the court must also take due notice of the antecedents of the accused as well as complainant while considering the petition under Section 482 of the Code. Now let's move to most frequently sought relief under Section 482, that is quashing of FIRs, criminal complaints, and for issuing directions. For this, we will briefly refer to some judgments of the Supreme Court on the subject. In State of Haryana versus Bhajanlal, the Supreme Court considered the scope and ambit of Section 482 as well as Article 2 to 6 of the Constitution, specifically in the context of quashing criminal proceedings. The Supreme Court, in para 102 of its judgment, laid down broad principles explaining when and under what circumstances the power under Section 482 can be exercised by the High Court, which we will now move on to. First, when the contents of FIR or complaint, even if they are taken to be true on their face value and accepted in their entirety, do not disclose a prima facie case against the accused. Secondly, where the allegations of FIR do not disclose a cognizable offense justifying the investigation by the police. Thirdly, where the allegations leveled against the accused and the evidence collected in support thereof do not disclose commission of any offense. Fourthly, where the allegations constitute only a non-cognizable offense, no investigation is permitted without an order of a magistrate as contemplated under Section 155, subsection 2 of the Code. Fifthly, where the allegations leveled are so absurd and inherently improbable, on the basis of which no prudent person can ever reach a just conclusion that there is just and sufficient ground for proceeding against the accused. Sixthly, where there is an express legal bar in any of the provisions of the code or any special act to the institution and continuation of the criminal proceedings. And finally, where a criminal proceeding is maliciously instituted with an ulterior motive due to a private or personal grudge. In such a situation, the High Court would be doing well in exercising its inherent power for questioning the FIR or criminal proceedings. These broad principles are being consistently followed by the Supreme Court as well as the High Courts without any exception. In a recent judgment, the Supreme Court in Prabhat Bhai Ahir versus State of Gujarat observed, and this judgment can be considered as a one-stop shop wherein the Honorable Supreme Court elaborated the above said principles of law by discussing several judgments of the Supreme Court. Now, if we start enumerating the instances where the High Court can exercise these inherent powers, I will probably end up talking for 2 hours. I think by now we have a fair idea as to when can the High Court invoke its inherent powers under Section 482 of the Code. I think what's more important is to see when the High Court cannot and must not exercise these powers. The exercise of these powers by the High Court has certain limitations which have been laid down by the Supreme Court. I'll briefly refer to some of them. The High Court cannot exercise the jurisdiction under Section 482 to review or recall any order which have been passed by them. The Supreme Court in Hari Singh Man versus Harbhajan Singh Bajwa categorically observed that the High Court can exercise jurisdiction under Section 482 to only rectify any clerical or arithmetical error and not to alter or review its judgment. The reason for this is simple. CRPC does not provide any provision for review. Moreover, Section 362 CRPC expressly bars the review of a judgment. The only remedy available to the litigant is to approach the higher court and challenge any order he or she may be aggrieved from. In state of Madhya Pradesh versus Man Singh, the Supreme Court observed that the moment the High Court or any court passes an order under the code, it becomes functus officio and would have no jurisdiction to entertain any petition for altering the order. Moving on, statements recorded before the police under Section 161 of the Code cannot be considered to quash criminal proceedings. In Rajendra Kaurav versus Bhai Sahab and others, Supreme Court in February this year observed that the statements made by witnesses under Section 161 of the Code cannot be relied upon to quash any criminal proceedings. The reason behind this is quite obvious. As the statements made under Section 161 of the Code are inadmissible in evidence, the High Court cannot rely upon such statements so as to enable itself to quash the criminal proceedings. The Supreme Court time and again emphasized that when an alternative remedy is provided under the code or any other law, the High Court should not exercise jurisdiction under Section 482. In state of Uttar Pradesh versus Mohammad Naim, the Supreme Court reiterated that if there is an alternative remedy available, the High Court has no power to exercise its jurisdiction under Section 482 or even under revisional jurisdiction. For example, the High Courts cannot grant bail to an accused under Section 482 as there are specific provisions for grant of bail under the code. There have been cases in the past where High Courts have exercised powers under Section 482 to pass orders which are specifically prohibited by the code. Now, if the code prohibits the courts from doing something, powers under Section 482 cannot be exercised to do such a thing. Section 482 cannot be invoked by the High Court to violate the provisions of the code. In Sankatha versus State of UP, Supreme Court was dealing with Section 369 of the old code, which now reads as Section 362 of the CRPC. The court observed that as the court specifically prohibits the court from reviewing its decisions, the court cannot reconsider its judgment under the garb of Section 482 CRPC. In other words, the High Court cannot exercise powers under the code which it does not have otherwise. Moving further, there have been many instances where the High Courts have also interfered in the investigation, which is totally impermissible in law. Sorry. Although the High Court can transfer the investigation of the case to a SIT or the CBI, depending on the facts and circumstances of the case, it cannot meddle with the manner in which the investigation is carried out by the authorities. High Court cannot even direct conduct of investigation in a particular fashion, as by doing so, the High Court will be exceeding its jurisdiction, embarking upon the exclusive domain of investigating agency. In state of Uttar Pradesh versus Aman Mittal and another, Supreme Court was faced with the judgment where the High Court, while exercising the powers under Section 482, had directed the change of investigating officer of the case and had further directed disciplinary action to be initiated against certain officials. The decision of the High Court was deprecated by the Supreme Court, and it observed that such a decision was beyond the scope and powers of the High Court under Section 482 of the Code. At last, I would say that no hard and fast rule or any state-jacket formula can be laid down for exercising the inherent powers of the High Court under Section 482 of the Code. Each and every case would be considered in light of its own peculiar facts and circumstances. The inherent powers provided under the Code are very wide and must be used with circumspection. Whether the High Court should invoke Section 482 or not must be left to the wisdom of the judges, who in turn must observe self-imposed restrictions, because the wider the power, greater should be the restraint. Over to Mr. T.
I now invite Sir Rathi to.
Moderator may take over, please.
Certainly. I thank Justice Malik for his insightful discussion on the topic, and I now invite Sir Rathi to carry forward the discussion.
Good evening, Lordship, all
Good
faculty
evening.
members and viewers. I hope all are safe and healthy, and by adhering the safety measures against this global pandemic, we are honored by the reputed institution by involving us in this webinar. And the topic which has been chosen, as it has been elaborately detailed in precious words by the Lordship, and the treasured experience of Lordship, I feel has enlightened all the viewers in connection to the powers under Section 482 CRPC. So, maximum it has been elaborated by Lordship. I want to supplement and add few words by providing that I had crowned 25 years of my life in this professional area, and I had found that the criminal system, the basic object and essential part of the criminal system is to protect the society against the criminals and the lawbreakers. And the sole idea by having this, it has been stated that the punishment has been prescribed to deter the criminals who have committed the crimes. And the criminal law, it consists of substantial criminal law and procedural criminal law. Substantial criminal law defines the offenses and the punishment for the said offenses, and the procedural law is administered to the substantial law. So this section 482, which is our topic, as it has been envisaged in the code, it also provides the mechanism and machinery for detection of crime, apprehension of suspected criminals, collection of evidence, determination of guilt or innocence of suspected persons, and imposition of suitable punishment on the guilty persons. I further move ahead. The Code of Criminal Procedure also controls and regulates the working of the machinery set up for investigation and for the trial of offenses. On one hand, the code provides adequately wide powers to investigate the and adjudicatory process to be strong, effective, and efficient. And on the other hand, it has also provided and to take precautions against the errors of judgment, human failure, and also to provide safeguard against the probable abuse of power by the police or the judicial officers. It often involves, while going through this criminal procedure code, as it is a nice balancing of conflicting considerations, delicate weighing of opposing claims. So, in order to have the topic today, it has been envisaged in this criminal procedure code and how far it is exhaustive. And while framing this criminal procedure code, it was made to be exhaustive and complete. And generally, it succeeded in this attempt. But still, where the courts find that there is no procedure provided to meet the exigencies of the situations, the inherent powers can be invoked by the courts. But the Honorable Supreme Court of India, in case of A.S. Goraya versus S.N. Thakur, it is reported in 1986 to SCC 709. It was declared by the Honorable Supreme Court of India that these inherent powers are not available with these subordinate courts. So these powers are to be invoked and do vest with the Honorable High Courts, and those can be invoked where the situation arises. Now, further moving ahead, this situation as to what are the functionaries for maintaining the provisions of this code. The functionaries are number one, the police, number two, prosecutors, number three, defense counsel, number four, magistrates, number five, session judges, judges of higher court, prison authorities, and correctional service personnel. So, in order to bring all these functionaries, they are bound to adhere the provisions while dealing with the provisions of this code. So, our today's topic, Section 482 CRPC, it has three essential ingredients. And those essential ingredients, as it has been detailed by Lordship, and for the sake of repetition, I am just saying that number one, it is inherent jurisdiction. Number two, to prevent abuse of process. Number three, to secure the ends of justice. So on evaluation of this section 482 CRPC, these three ingredients are must to be taken into consideration before invoking the powers under Section 482 CRPC. This section makes it clear that the provisions of this code, of Criminal Procedure Code, are not intended to limit or affect the inherent powers of the Honorable High Court. And as it has been detailed by the Lordship, that how these powers are to be used, what are the circumstances these powers are to be used, and in which manner these powers are to be used. Now, 7 points Lordship has detailed in case of State of Haryana versus Bhajan Lal. This was a matter where the Honorable Punjab and Haryana High Court has quashed the FIR, and State of Haryana has approached the Honorable Supreme Court of India, wherein these guidelines were framed, which are effective and available for each coming advocate, the viewers who are opting for the litigation field, and the viewers who are already in this profession. So these are the guiding principles which have been laid by the Honorable Supreme Court of India in the State of Haryana versus Bhajan Lal. So, in order to further develop that how these powers are to be taken up, there are various judgments from since inception that how the courts have to deal with these situations. The Honorable Supreme Court of India had considered in various cases that how these powers are to be taken. In a case of Madhulimaya versus State of Maharashtra, 1977, 4 SCC 551, the Honorable Supreme Court, while dealing with that matter, has elaborated, held and observed that powers under Section 482 CRPC can be invoked apart from the other powers as the Criminal Procedure Code. And keeping that ratio of law, since then the Honorable High Courts are questioning the FIRs, questioning the process which have been issued by the learned magistrate in the cases. And later on in 2009, while adhering the ratio of law, in case of Dhariwal Tobacco versus State of Maharashtra, the similar ratio was opted by the Honorable Supreme Court in the case 2009-2 SCC 370. But later on, during the course of this time, in 2013, in 2006, in 2013, Mohit versus State of Uttar Pradesh. It is 2013 7 SCC 789, where Honorable Supreme Court, while considering the powers of the High Court under Section 482 CRPC, came to the conclusion that when these specific provisions are provided under Section 397 CRPC, where the revisional powers are there, then in those circumstances, the Honorable High Court cannot invoke the powers under Section 482 CRPC. So these two conflicting judgments, earlier to Dhariwal and the Madhulimaya, and this judgment later on in 2016, in case of Prabhu Chawla versus State of Rajasthan, the matter was again brought in the ambit of the Honorable Supreme Court to consider this issue. And finally, again, it was settled that even though there are various other powers, various other procedure, but even though the proceedings which are found to be fit and have been initiated without evidence, without having any face value of the allegations, in those situations, these proceedings or the FIR can be quashed under Section 482 by invoking the powers by the Honorable High Court. Now, I further want to add that why these powers are envisaged in law and available for the Honorable High Court to deal with it, as there is a doctrine in law that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So the Honorable High Court of each state has been invoking these powers while seeing that whether the investigations are done properly or these FIRs by following the principle of Bhajan Lal, or the process which are being issued by the learned magistrate in the complaint cases, whether those procedures or the process do constitute the commission of offense, or it has been initiated malafidely, or to take revenge, or to give a color of a civil natured matter to be initiated by, in the shape of a criminal proceedings. So in these type of circumstances, the Honorable High Court have the inherent powers to quash such proceedings and criminal cases. Now, what is the abuse of process of law as stated by Lordship? In order to prevent this abuse of process of law, the Honorable High Court has to see that, for example, in a case, for instance, we take that there was no material available with the learned magistrate to summon an accused in those proceedings, or the learned magistrate while issuing that process has exceeded its jurisdiction, and the facts and circumstances of the case do not constitute the commission of offense as alleged by the complainant. So in these circumstances, in order to prevent the abuse of process of law, Honorable High Court have power under Section 482 to quash those proceedings and stop the misuse of the process of law as being opted by the complainant. Now, in another case, the Honorable Supreme Court, in order to secure the ends of justice, has upheld the various decisions of the Honorable High Court as passed under Section 482 CRPC. Now, how the ends of justice could be secured? This aspect is to be elaborated based on facts and circumstances of the each case. There are various cases which are legally cannot be allowed to be compounded. Section 320 of the CRPC do not find place to have mention of those offenses like matrimonial offenses, offenses under Section 307 IPC, 308 IPC. So which offenses cannot be compounded with the permission of the court or by amicably settling the same with the complainant. In those cases, in order to secure the ends of justice, the Honorable High Court are invoking the powers by quashing those cases on the basis of amicable settlement, compromise between the parties. Now, further, it has been held in various cases that while traveling in the sphere of this legal practice in the courts, it may not be opted that once the FIR is registered and you straightway run to the High Court by saying that it may be quashed. That may not be the right approach, because the Code of Criminal Procedure do have conventional remedies with it, which are required to be exhausted. Suppose FIR is registered and I, being an advocate, suggest that we should go for questioning of FIR. So at that point of time, the Honorable High Court has to evaluate the position by noticing that still the investigation is at a preliminary stage. The allegation do constitute the offense or not. And once this investigation is over, it is culminated in the charge sheet. So at that very stage also, the aggrieved has a right to approach by way of arguing on the charge against those allegations. He can seek a discharge from those offenses. Against that, a revision can be filed. So there are number of aspects which are required to be considered while entering into the field of criminal practice as to what is the appropriate time for invoking the powers from the Honorable High Court, whether the facts and circumstances do constitute that all the essential ingredients are met out. So merely just filing a petition under Section 482 CRPC will not suffice. So we had to be more care in getting these petitions filed by invoking the provisions. Now, in some of the cases where, as said by the Lordship in his precious words, that suo motu also these powers can be invoked by the Honorable High Court. In one of the cases, which is Popular Muthaiya versus State, in that case, the aggrieved persons have suffered conviction before the trial court, and the revision petition was filed. Revision petition was also dismissed against that order, and they were before the Honorable High Court in the revision proceedings. While considering and evaluating the facts, and when it was legally examined, it was found by the Honorable High Court that these set of accused persons are not involved, and there are some XYZ other persons who have involvement in the crime. So, by invoking the powers, while acting in the revisional jurisdiction, powers under Section 482 CRPC were invoked, and it was directed that the further investigation to be carried out in this matter. This case was challenged before the Honorable Supreme Court, but the Honorable Supreme Court has upheld the findings that yes, all the required three essential ingredients prevent the abuse of process of law to secure the ends of justice. This order has been rightly passed. So, meaning thereby, suo motu also, these powers can be invoked so as to see that the ends of justice has been met in the cases, or there shall not be any misuse of the abuse of process of law. Further, as I stated in my opening words, that in number of cases, as stated by the Lordship also in the words, that what is required to be seen, conduct of the parties. Person who is setting the criminal machinery in motion, whether he was acting bona fidely or he has a bona fide grievance for which he wants to have a redressal from the authorities. So in case of Madhav Rao Scindia versus Bajirao Angre in 1988, 1 SCC 694, the Honorable Court, while entertaining this petition, the Honorable Supreme Court came to the conclusion there was some dispute of trust related to those facts. The FIR was registered against the persons, and a family dispute was, civil dispute was given a color of criminal activities. So, Honorable Supreme Court concluded that the civil matter cannot at all be allowed to be continued, and the civil remedies, when are available, then the action of getting the FIR registered was found to be nullified, and the FIR was quashed. Similarly, in order to add furthermore, the question further arises whether there is any limitation in law for getting these powers invoked from the Honorable High Court. So far as I had read, there is no limitation for getting the invocation of powers under Section 482 from the Honorable High Court. So whenever it is found at any stage of the proceedings, when it is seen that the court is acting beyond its jurisdiction, there is a failure of adherence of the procedure, conventional procedure, or at any stage during the course of the investigation when it is concluded that a false implication is there. So the parties can approach the Honorable High Court by pleading that these powers may be invoked, as in order to secure the ends of justice, these aspects are to be considered. Furthermore, as stated by Lordship, that what more is to be done, how it is to be cogitated, there are various number of judgments, and the treasured experience of Lordship has stated that it would take another 2 hours, 3 hours, and so on in providing the case law. It is true, as Lordship has held in number of cases, has seen those circumstances. Daily we are seeing that how these situations are to be get considered, what are the essential requirements, and how and in what manner they have to proceed with all these things. So it is a wide chapter, and these powers are to be taken into consideration in each and every matter, basing on the facts and circumstances of that case. As rightly said by Lordship, that these powers under Section 482 CRPC are not available with the Honorable Supreme Court of India. The Honorable Supreme Court, in case of Delhi Judicial Services Association versus State of Gujarat, 1991 4 SCC 406, has held and observed, wherein it was said that though there is no provision like Section 482 of the Criminal Procedure Code conferring the express powers on this court means Supreme Court, to quash or set aside the criminal proceedings pending before the criminal court to prevent the abuse of process of the court. But this court has power to quash such proceedings in exercise of its plenary and residue power provided under Article 136 of the Constitution of India. So, in totality of the circumstances, these powers, inherent powers, saving of inherent powers, this section is very wide, and the Honorable High Court, while dealing with this section, in order to provide justice, in order to prevent the abuse of process, these are to be dealt with by evaluating the facts and circumstances of this case. So these are my views regarding this section 482 CRPC. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Sanjay Rathi for his eloquent description of the topic. We have a few questions, sir, and I'd like to address them each to a particular speaker. First, we have the question from Mr. Hiram Verma. Can the charge sheet be quashed before the magistrate under Section 190 has exercised its discretion? Sir, Mr. Malik, if you can address the question. Mr. Malik.
What's the question, please?
Can the charge sheet be quashed before the magistrate under Section 190 has exercised its jurisdiction, its discretion?
As Mr. Rathi has pointed out just now, this list would be exhaustive and unending rather, because each case has to be seen, considered in its peculiar facts and circumstances. If after going through the circumstances of the case, peculiar facts of the case, evidence or material collected against the accused, no case whatsoever is made out against him, then the Honorable High Court would be doing well while exercising its inherent powers under Section 482 for quashing such criminal proceedings.
Okay. Sir, the next question that we have with us right now is what is the difference between powers under Section 136 read under Article 142, read with Article 142 and 482 of the Constitution, and does the presence of remedy under the former automatically nullifies my remedy under 482? If Mr. Sanjay Rathi can take the question.
This very question can more effectively be answered by Lordship, because Lordship has dealt with such powers, and the viewers would be more enlightened on this.
I'll try to answer it. So far, the powers, as I have already mentioned, inherent powers under Section 482 CRPC are not available as such before the Honorable Supreme Court. Supreme Court has no such inherent powers as contained in 482 for the High Court. I have specifically pointed out these powers are available to the High Court only. So there is no conflict between the powers under 482 CRPC vis-a-vis Article 136 or 142 of the Constitution of India, exercised by the Honorable Supreme Court. There is no conflict, no doubt. and we should not be confused about it.
Thank you, sir. And there's one more question. Can a
So,
fresh trial?
sorry, yes, please.
So you can go ahead if you have anything else to add.
I was just referring to Article 142. That power is exclusive domain of the Honorable Supreme Court for doing any securing the ends of justice. The Honorable Supreme Court has very wide powers under Article 142. Although the Honorable High Court would be exercising its writ jurisdiction also sometimes for questioning the FIR, as in Chaudhary Bhajanlal's case it was done, and that was upheld also by the Supreme Court. But so far as this inherent power under 482 is concerned, the Honorable Supreme Court has no such powers. It has different kind of powers under Article 142, and the powers under Article 142 are also very, very wide powers. There is no limitation on those powers. Limitation, if any, would be again self-imposed limitations by the Honorable Supreme Court itself. Next question, please.
Certainly, sir. The next question that we have is, can a fresh trial be initiated by the High Court under Section 482?
Fresh trial.
Certainly, sir.
Yes, it can be initiated. It can be, because you can seek directions also from the Honorable High Court invoking its jurisdiction, inherent jurisdiction under 482. May I give you the example? Suppose there is a complaint where the police refused to register the FIR and complainant was helpless. Even 156 CRPC did not work in his favor, and the complainant went to the Honorable High Court invoking its powers under 482. If the High Court is satisfied on the basis of material supplied to it by the petitioner that there was more than sufficient evidence and material available, but the investigating agency, for the reason best known to it, did not register the FIR, and it was a clear-cut case made out against the accused, the High Court would be well within its jurisdiction under 482 to direct registration of FIR and for initiating the criminal proceedings against such an accused.
Thank you, sir. The next question that we have is, can an application under Section 482 CRPC would lie against the direction of the magistrate to register and investigate an FIR in exercise of powers under Section 156, subsection 3 CRPC?
Again, it would depend on the facts and circumstances of that case. If the High Court is convinced on the material available on record of the case that the learned magistrate has exceeded its jurisdiction, it was not a case for registration of FIR. There was no sufficient material, no sufficient allegation against the accused or the complainant, because of his antecedents, because of his conduct, was trying to vindicate his personal grudge against the accused, and the learned magistrate fell in error while exercising its power under 156C. The High Court can certainly quash that order while exercising its powers under 482 CRPC.
As I have stated earlier also, in addition to the words of Lordship, in Prabhu Chawla versus State of Rajasthan, in that case also, it has been held that that order of summoning the accused, it may be revisable order, but simultaneously it can be challenged by invoking the powers under Section 482 CRPC. So that was the ratio of law. So that has to be adhered by the courts.
Certainly, sir. We have just a few questions left.
Yes,
The
please.
question that we have is, can Section 173, subsection 8, restrict powers under Section 482?
No.
No.
But there is no restriction.
In fact, any of the viewer, all viewers are welcome for putting their different questions in different forms they deem it appropriate. But before doing so, let's examine again the very language of Section 482. I intentionally pointed out three basic principles, three basic objects which have been sought to be achieved by the legislation while inserting 482 in the code. In case any such order is passed, then you pointed out Section 173(8). It would be normally further investigation is always permissible, but reinvestigation of any matter by the investigating agency would not be permissible in law except with the permission of the court. There are judgments, and the High Court would be well within its jurisdiction while exercising its inherent powers under 482 for this purpose as well.
Since we are running short on time, I'd address the last question that we have today. Can Section
Yes, please.
482 be invoked in the matrimonial disputes wherein court directs the parties to mutually resolve their disputes?
Yes, it can always be invoked. I have been invoking this power in such matters. May I give you a concrete example? Suppose there was a case where initially 376 was the charge leveled against the accused by the alleged victim lady, and later on they got married with each other. That lady was carrying pregnancy of 7 months. Parents of the victim as well as the accused were there present in the court before me, and all were requesting for quashing the criminal proceedings which were still pending against the husband, because the parties by that time have reconciled their differences, their mistakes, their blunders, whatever you may call it, and finally they were looking forward that why to spoil the life and career of the victim and the accused, as they were living husband and wife happily, then there was no point in carrying the criminal proceeding any further. So keeping in view the totality of facts and circumstances of that case, and finally to secure the ends of justice, those proceedings were ordered to be quashed. Again, may I give you another example? A son caused some injuries to his own father. Son was then facing criminal trial. Father got the FIR registered. Son was facing criminal trial. Then son came for the High Court under 482 seeking quashing of the FIR, saying that he was a blind person and allegations were false. Both father and son were before the court, present before me, and counsel for the son, petitioner, argued that the allegations were totally false because this petitioner was a blind person and it was not possible for him to cause those injuries to the father, complainant. The father was also present in the court. He came forward and said, Lordship, this fellow was very well having full vision when he caused injuries to me, and this disability suffered later on. Then I said to that sick gentleman that justice has only been done by the God. Then he said, this fact was not made me to understand. I was not concerned like this by anybody so far. And I think your lordship is perfectly right. No better justice can be done. He has already suffered this much, and I don't like that he should suffer any further. The father offered the FIR should be quashed. Then I asked the son not to hesitate in touching the feet of his father, who was present in the court itself. Then he also did not lose any time. He fell on the feet of his father. Both took one each other in the and hugged each other, wept loudly in the court, and I thought that was the real justice done in the court without any wastage of time.
It was a real justice.
You will find very interesting cases. You will find very peculiar facts and circumstances, and this list would be unending. Still, High Court would be very, very cautiously and with all circumspection invoking its inherent powers under Section 482, not in a routine matter, but in the facts and circumstances of the case, so as to secure the ends of justice and to prevent abuse of process of law.
Very true.
Certainly, sir. Keeping in mind the interest of the participants, they've been sending a lot of questions. There's one more question that should be the last that should conclude this
Yes,
session.
yes, please, yes.
Certainly. Can the High Court exercise its inherent powers to order deposit of certain amount in the PM CARES Fund as a condition for granting bail? If it does, won't it be punishing the person before he or she is held guilty?
I don't think High Court would invoke such powers in such a matter, and should not exercise inherent powers. Because, may I tell you another example in the case of bail itself. In a matter of bail, the learned session judge, while granting bail to an accused, imposed very heavy amount of surety that was beyond the capacity of the person. That accused came to the High Court only for seeking quashing that part of the order of bail, which was not enabling him to get out of the jail, only for that reason, because he was not in a position to furnish that heavy surety. Then that part of the order was quashed by the High Court in 482, and rightly quashed, so as to ensure that order passed by under the code itself should be given effect to.
So the question, as it has been answered by Lordship, such type of conditions in law are termed to be onerous conditions. These cannot be imposed. And there are series of judicial verdicts that this clearly amounts to harassment. So such onerous condition, if at any point of time imposed by the Sessions Court or the High Court, those has been set aside in number of cases.
Yes.
With this, we come to the end of the question answer session and the session as well. I thank Justice Malik and Mr. Rafi for providing us with a thorough insight into Section 482. The nuances discussed by the speakers will aid all of us in understanding the scope and ambit of Section 482 and in great depth. I'd now like to invite Dr. Kumarastan Pandey, Faculty Coordinator, Editor-in-Chief, Center for Criminal Justice Administration, and Associate Professor, Dr. RML NLU, to speak a few words and thank the speakers on the society.
Thank you, Rhythm, and good evening to one and all. I hope I am audible. I am?
Yes, you're audible. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you again. And the issue of inherent powers of the High Court has always been a very fascinating area for practitioners. And because there are no neatly drawn boundaries, as has been elaborated on by the honorable speakers, of course, it evinces great interest amongst legal fraternity, including the students, of course, because they would have a lot of questions about its ambidoscope and boundaries. We were indeed very fortunate to have amongst us Honorable Mr. Justice Rameshwar Singh Malik, who very beautifully dwelled upon the inherent issues which are inherent in the topic that itself is inherent parts of the High Courts. You spared your valuable time and you enlightened us with your precious thoughts, sir. We are very grateful to you for the same. I'm also very thankful to Mr. Sanjay Rathi, co-chairman, Bar Council of Delhi, and also former additional Advocate General of Government of Haryana, who very nicely, very beautifully supplemented to the words of wisdom that were spoken by Honorable Justice Rameshwar Singh. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay. And we look forward to many more such engagements with our learning speakers in future as well. I must also express my gratitude to the organizing team. My presence is only token. Let me thank from the bottom of my heart the team comprising of students right from second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, and few from first year as well, who I think asked very pertinent and very important questions. Who are the real movers and shakers behind the entire affair? And this was just a small step. And I believe that in future this would shape up the destiny of not only the student community but also the university as a institution. So I thank everyone, the participants, for their patience, for asking such beautiful questions. I again thank the eminent panel of experts with us today evening, and I wish you all very happy Eid. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Welcome.
With this, we come officially to the end of the session today. I thank all the participants and the speakers once again. With this, we are going to close the session. Thank you.
Well.